Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new session about poison center notification. My name is Daniele Ape, and I'm part of the ECHA poison center team. The focus of this presentation will be on the workability solution, so-called interchangeable component group solution. It's a particular solution which has been introduced by the latest amendment of Annex 8, and it intends to help the submitters, notifier, when they face specific challenges with the identification of the composition of the mixture because of an unpredictable or highly variable composition. This solution will allow them to group components and is a solution which can be applied to any sector and any mixture. So it's a cross-sector solution. I will present briefly the main principles underpinning this solution. And then in the second part of my presentation, I will show a short demo to show practically how the interchangeable component group applies. In addition, we have prepared and made available a practical short guide manual, which will be available in the event page on the ECHA website, where the main practical instruction on how to use the interchangeable component group are included. Now, the challenges that some companies may face when notifying the composition are due to the fact that certain components are present in an unpredictable concentration. This is because some of the components may be used interchangeably. So the exact mixture composition cannot be established at each point in time, or cannot be precisely enough established. And this, notwithstanding, there are no changes possibly with regard to the classification and the toxicological properties of the mixture. So this will trigger an unnecessary high number of notification and updates and UFI to be included on the label. So the interchangeable components group solution is basically provides the possibility to apply less strict requirements in terms of compositional information. So the submitter can benefit from a higher flexibility in the notification of the composition. And the solution seeks a balance between the information which is needed by the poison center and the objective difficulty, administrative burden and difficulty to comply with the legal provision. So the main benefit is a reduction on the number of notifications which are needed and in the number of updates. Of course, it is necessary for these components to be grouped in an interchangeable component group to meet specific criteria, which I will present shortly. Just to give a brief example, one of the most common cases when this solution may apply is when a company uses different supplier for a component, for instance, a mixture, which is not exactly from a chemical point of view the same, but has the same function in the final mixture. So there are no changes in the technical specification of the final mixture. There are no changes in the mixture classification, and there are no changes in the toxicological profile. But simply, these mixture are chemically different, so they will lead to a different final composition. The component do not necessarily need to have the same function, technical function in the final mixture. Another example is when for the formulation of a mixture, different raw materials are used. Even if they are not technically equivalent, they have the final mixture has the same other classification, and still there's no impact on the emergency health response. But the use of different raw materials and different components according to the availability, for instance, leads to different final mixtures, which will need different notification and different UFIs if the strict Annex 8 provision would be applied. Now, the Icg solution, as we said, is basically the possibility to group individual components, which can be either substances or mixture, under, let's call it an umbrella component, without the need to indicate the specific individual concentration of each component. So Group components may be used, as we saw in the previous example, one instead of the other, or they simply can be used unpredictably. Not necessarily one or the other. They can be used in a variable relative concentration. So in order to be grouped in an ICG, components have to meet one of the two sets of criteria which are included in Annex 8. The components can be grouped when they have the same classification for health and physical hazard, they have the same technical function in the final mixture, and they have the same toxicological properties. Alternatively, the components can also be grouped if they have the same classification but limited to specific other classes, so they have to be classified only for specific other classes, and they have a similar pH, and then are maximum 5 components in this group. So in this second set of criteria, there's no mention to the technical function. In addition to this, there is one common general criteria which applies to both sets, which is basically the need for the hazard identification and all the additional information required by Annex 8 on the final mixture to be the same. So regardless the specific interchangeable component present in a specific batch, the hazard identification and all the information required by Annex 8 on the final mixture must remain the same. Now, the guidance on Annex 8 provides more explanation and detail on the application of each single criteria. What I want to underline here is the fact that not all this information is legally required to be included in the notification. Only some of it is, and therefore only this information can be automatically checked. Like, for instance, the classification has to be the same, and the fact that there must be maximum 5 components if you apply the second set of criteria. The rest of the information is not mandatory required, can be, as we will show shortly, can be provided voluntarily, but is not automatically checked, and is the responsibility of the submitter to make sure that these criteria are met. I always want to remind that the authorities may want to ask for additional information if it's necessary. How it all works from a practical point of view. As you will see shortly, the interchangeable component group is considered from a technical point of view in our submission system as a mixture in mixture. Even if it is not a mixture in mixture, because it's not one single component, but is a group of components. It is necessary to provide a meaningful name to this interchangeable component group. And this means that the Poisson center operator has to be able to easily understand which kind of component may be included in the final composition. The interchangeable component can be either substances or mixture in mixture, and there will be a specific tick box to flag that this component is actually an interchangeable component group. Therefore, specific information requirement and validation rules apply. From a practical point of view, I will show you what are the main steps, which is basically adding a new mixture component in the final mixture composition, name it, check the box for ICG, then add one by one each single interchangeable component within this group, and each component has to be identified as for the standard rules. Finally, you will provide the concentration and the classification for the group as a whole, and not for each single component. So finally, the Annex 8 we know requires, for specific reason, full and precise composition. Then when the composition in certain situation is highly variable or is unpredictably variable, because as we saw, you may use different supplier for a component which is similar in a continuous production process. So this situation, the solution allows for a less detailed information. The solution is applicable to any sector and any mixture, and the main principle is that the impact on the emergency response is minimal. Now, in my demo, I will use as an example a general R surface cleaner, which has a composition, And one of these components, which is a MIM, is used as a emulsifier in the final composition, but is purchased from different suppliers. And each supplier provides a MIM, which has the same technical function, is similar enough for the formulator, but is not exactly chemically the same. So basically, since the production process is continuous in each batch, you may have an unknown percentage of each of these components, but the total concentration of the emulsifier is known, of course, and has to be provided according to the limit of Annex A. From each supplier, you receive certain information about the MIM. As I said, I will show you each MIM grouped in the interchangeable component group has to be identified following the standard requirement. So in this demo, I will focus the attention on the creation of an interchangeable component group. So we will not go through the whole preparation of a dossier. What is important to underline is that from the dashboard, you can decide to create substance component or mixture components or even an Icg components in advance and then include it in the final composition record. This is because the system allows you to set a specific working context. The more straightforward way, and is the option that I will show you today, is to include the components directly in the final mixture composition document. Therefore, I open my draft dossier that I was preparing, and I will focus on the mixture composition document. From the navigation tree, you can easily navigate through the different fields and part of the dossier. My mixture composition documents already contains all the other substances and components with their specific concentration range in accordance to Annex A. I will now focus on the creation of the Icg. Now you always add a new item to the mixture composition document. And important to be noted that components can, in the mixture composition document, you can always include only substance dataset or mixture datasets. These are the only two datasets that can be included in the composition. When you want to create an Icg, you will have to start from including a mixture dataset. As we said, the system treats the Icg from a technical point of view as mixture and mixture. If you would have prepared the dataset for the Icg in advance, you will have it here. In this case, I create a new record and I provide the name. This is the name of the Icg. It has to be as meaningful as possible, according to the legal text, has to reflect at least the technical function of the component. The legal entity owner is requested by the system mandatorily for every kind of component. Please remember, this is not required, is not checked, is simply a technical constraint. Now the Icg record has been created. The record has been created. Here is the part where you will flag the fact that this record is an interchangeable component group. This will warn the system, will alert the system, and once it's saved, the system in the navigation tree, the system will show you the relevant fields. Now the function of the whole group can be included here, and as I said, is not mandatory. And the typical concentration or concentration range has to be provided for the group as a whole. So in this case, you don't know which exact interchangeable component is present in each batch of the mixture, but you have to know the total concentration of the component used as a emulsifier. And this concentration range has to be provided in accordance to Annex 8, which is based on the classification of the component. Once I save, the new interchangeable component group is included in the mixture composition document, and by expanding the navigation tree, I can find all the record which are relevant for this specific component, for the specific group. Now, you have to proceed with including in the Icg composition document, one by one, all the interchangeable components. Each interchangeable component, as I said, has to be identified in accordance to the standard rule. Therefore, in case of mixture in mixture, it depends whether the supplier has provided you with a UFI or not. So as for the final mixture composition, I add one by one my components. For simplicity, in this case, I pre-prepared my mixture in mixture, my MIMS records in advance. So by selecting mixture product, I can find them in my database. And I will start with the first one, emulsifier blend gold. I do not necessarily need to provide the function. I do not need to provide the concentration because the concentration is provided at group level. Once I save, I will find in my navigation tree all the fields related to this new component that I included in the group. In this case, I do not have a UFI. My supplier did not provide me with a UFI, so I had to provide a composition available from the SDS as a minimum, and by expanding the navigation tree, you can find already this information simply because I provided it in advance, but you can include it directly here. And then I need to provide the information about my supplier. All these records are records that can be prepared in advance and can be reused every time that are needed. I don't need any other information about the MIM because the classification and the concentration, as we said, is provided at group level. Now I go back to the interchangeable component group composition and I add the second component, which is the emulsifier blend silver. Again, I don't need to provide any further information because once I save the information, my new component will be included in the interchangeable component group. And since I pre-prepared the record in advance, I have already my composition, which comes from the SDS as a minimum, and the information about the supplier. Now I go to include the last interchangeable component group, interchangeable component in the group, which is the emulsifier ES35. I save. And in this case, my supplier provided me with the UFI of this MIM because this MIM has been notified itself in the same member state where I'm placing my mixture on the market. Therefore, I can identify the MIM, the mixture in mixture, with the UFI, in addition to the product name, the product identifier. Now, the submission can be updated in the future if I want to add a new interchangeable component, or I want to remove an existing interchangeable component with no need to change the UFI. What I need to do now is to complete the information on the interchangeable component group by adding the classification. In this case, all my interchangeable components, they have exactly the same classification. Therefore, I can provide this information only at group level. There is no need to provide labeling information, even if it is always possible to automatically calculate. There's no, as you said, there is the possibility to include information about the toxicological feature of the characteristic of the group, of the component included in the group, or information about the pH. This is not mandatory, so it is not checked, but it's possible to provide. And my interchangeable component group is included in the composition. So thank you very much for the attention. This is all, and I remind you, you can find more information about the interchangeable component group in the guidance, firstly, in the practical manual for dossier creation, or in the short summary, the short practical guide that I mentioned earlier, where the information on including an ICG have been summarized and provided. Thank you very much.